Marantz PM64 Mark II 1987 stereo amplifier. This is the documentation of the experience of a hobby project, made with the hope that it could be helpful to others. However, these videos are not intended as tutorials. They only show the development of a personal practice, which may or may not be a good one. Therefore, if you are following along, you are doing so at your own risk. This was a fairly expensive amplifier produced in the late 1980s. When looking for the service manual, it should not be confused with the predecessor model PM64, which has similar schematics, but not identical. This is the correct service manual for the model PM64 Mark II. Please notice that inside the cabinet, the internal power supply is not isolated, nor shielded, and servicing it requires the same care for safety that one should have for servicing a vacuum tube radio. Moreover, the main board is powered with different DC lines, two of which provide plus 56 and minus 56 volts, and these are already dangerous voltages. Another interesting detail is that the power cord includes an external ground connection, which however is not connected. Considering that the internal power supply is not well isolated, and that there can be some leakage current between the metal cabinet and ground, it could be a good idea to connect the external ground to the cabinet for safety. The cabinet back panel has an input voltage selector that allows choosing between 220 and 240 volts. In Europe, the mains voltage has been harmonized to 230 volts, and in this case, between 220 and 240, it is advisable to select 240 volts. I do not have a personal interest in amplifiers, even less if they are solid state. But my cousin asked me to check it and clean it, and then he told me the story and the meaning of this item for the family, knowing which made it very important for my feelings as well. So here is the beginning of the process, starting from removing the 6 screws that hold the top cover. This amplifier is very clean. However, a little amount of dust made it inside the cabinet, and blowing some air is a good idea. The bottom panel is removed. There are 10 screws holding it. The knobs are removed. There are 2 groups of knobs, and in each group the knobs are identical and interchangeable. The holes on the front panel are as large as the knobs, therefore the front panel could be removed without removing the knobs. To avoid scratching the front panel, it is better to remove it. It is held in place by 6 screws. One of them is hidden by some soft tape. Now that the space behind the front panel is accessible, more cleaning is in order. The main volume potentiometer and the input selector rotary element are temporarily removed from the panel. That would allow later access to other controls under them. It is now possible to start using the contact cleaner for all the potentiometers and switches. The volume potentiometer is installed again on the panel, and the same is done for the input selector rotary element. The amplifier is now ready to be tested. While testing the amplifier, feeding an audible sine wave to one of the amplifier inputs, it appears that there is a significant distortion on the right channel. Trying to troubleshoot the issue, it appears that the distortion is generated somewhere in this area of the mainboard. However, after some unsuccessful attempts of locating the culprit, the distortion suddenly disappears, and the cause remains a mystery. In the end, the two channels appear perfectly aligned without the need of touching any of the adjustments. Everything seems to be okay, so the cabinet can be reassembled. Together with the amplifier, also the tuner ST35 came for cleaning and for an inspection. There is nothing remarkable to report about it except that it seems unwise the fact that the power cord does not include an external ground connection, while the internal power supply is not so well insulated against the metal cabinet. It is a pity that for such a beautiful and fairly expensive tuner, No shortwave band was designed. There are no good quality loudspeakers available for testing the amplifier. However, everything seems to be okay. With the receiver, only a scan on the AM band is done. The FM works just fine.
indimenticabile. Praticamente la linea di costa è avanzata di 4 km. Il porto di Claudio era più avanzato e fu costruito da Claudio nel 41 a.C., poi fu inaugurato da Nerone, per l'occasione fece ponere anche una moneta, e perché in quel momento la città di Ostia era veramente alla massima espansione e servivano derrate alimentari, serviva tutto. E l'unico porto era quello di Pozzuoli, quindi molto più a sud, quindi era tutto molto complicato. È vero che Ostium Foce era sull'imbocco del Tevere, ma era spesso sottoposto all'insabbiamento ed era un porto.
About 1 year later, the amplifier returns on the bench with the same intermittent issue that was not solved before. However, this time, there are different suspects, the relays responsible for activating the speaker outputs. They are located on a dedicated board identified as Speaker Protector Relay Assembly. These two relays are extracted from the board for further inspection. They have a lid that allows inserting some contact cleaner. After that, they are tested and they seem to work well. Hoping for the best, they are installed back on the board and the amplifier is tested, always using dummy loads instead of speakers. But the intermittent issue is still spotted at least one more time. The new relays arrived. They are smaller than the original ones, and an adaptation is necessary made out of two pieces of prototype board. The new relays with their adaptation take the place of the original ones. First, the outputs on top are tested, and they seem to work well. Also, the couple below is tested, and it appears to work well too.